Welcome to the show, Julianne.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. So usually this is when I ask what the sober date is, but this is a new show. So let me start with did you have any brothers or sisters when you were born, or you an only child?
At the time, I was okay. This is I guess it's not really that complicated, but I wasn't an only child. My dad had other children, but they were never in the picture. So I was an only child to myself. I never knew about those other children until years later. So yes, at the time, to me, I was an only child.
Okay, so you were raised as an only child.
Well, and my brother and my sister came later, but when I was born, there was nobody there.
So you're the oldest of three.
Correct.
Okay. And parents still together?
No.
How old were you when they divorced?
Oh, so they were never married. Their relationship was for the length of my father's life, it was like back and forth with the two of them, but it was never healthy. He was a raging alcoholic, heroin addict. He was extremely abusive to women. Like I watched him beat the fuck out of my mom so many times. She left him, I think, right after my little sister was born. So that would have been, or no, right when she got pregnant, which would have been, I would have been like 5.
Okay.
So that's when I no longer lived with my dad. And then I never lived with him again from that point on. But like he would bounce in and out. Like my mom would let him come back and he would be with us for a little bit. And then he would, go back out and do his thing and live on the street and be addicted to drugs or rent rooms here and there. But he was never in the picture again.
Okay. So you pretty much grew up with a single mom then?
I did, yeah.
How was that? What was that like?
We had a lot of support from my mom's brothers and her sister. They were successful by all accounts, educated, and had thriving careers. And so by the age of 25, though, my mom had 3 children, and she didn't work because she had the support of my uncles and my aunts. And I remember asking her, like, when I got older, I was like, you like never worked. She's like, how could I work? I have 3 kids. I was like, oh, that sounds pretty fucking privileged to me. But yeah, like her job was just to go to school and like stay away from my dad. They just like, that was like the condition. Like they'll help take care of the kids if you stay away from that terrible Rick. So
Yeah, you said dad almost like he was in the past tense. Did he pass away?
he did. Yeah. Sorry. I never even answered. I don't know if I
didn't ask yet.
No. Yeah, he did. He passed away when I was 12. He died of a drug overdose, a heroin overdose.
How'd you take it since he was always in and out?
Okay, so talk about trauma, right? I don't remember being told. I don't remember a lot about the whole situation, right? And you always hear like, oh, I must have blocked it out, right? People say that, but like I genuinely have a great memory usually. So when I don't remember things, it's really kind of weird. But my mom, she told me that the night before Christmas, I told her that I had a dream about my dad and that something was wrong. I don't remember this dream. However, my dad used to send cards for like all holidays, and I hadn't gotten anything for like Thanksgiving, and then it would have been my birthday and then Christmas, and we had gotten nothing. And I that had told me something was off, because like as much as he was like not in the picture and living on the street, he always made sure he sent cards for things. So I remember telling her that, and she said that she called the morgue on Christmas and he was there, but she said it was my dream that alerted her that something was wrong. The way that I found out, though, was not when she found out, and it was not before New Year's. It was between Christmas and New Year's. My grandmother my step-grandmother, I guess, my stepfather's mother, she was an alcoholic, and she came over, and she was lit, and was slurring her words at me, and then was like, after the new year, your mother's going to tell you something that no little girl should ever have to hear. And I remember being like, well, now you got to tell me, like, what is going on? And I just kept like asking and asking and asking. And eventually my mom told me, but I don't remember her telling me. I don't remember my response. However, I do remember a teacher at school pulling me into a closet because my mom must have written a note and told them what happened in school. And as soon as that closet door closed and she hugged me, I just like broke down and cried. And this was a teacher that I never even really liked, but it was clear that I just like really needed somebody in that moment. But those are the bits and the pieces that I remember, but I'm sure there's a lot of things in between that I really, really don't remember that maybe I perhaps did block out.
Do you think do you remember that teacher's name?
Yeah, her name was Miss Corcoran.
Okay. I'm just curious to see how well your memory was back then.
Mm-hmm.
Because, how long ago was that?
God, that was 6th grade. I'm going to be 40 in December. However old you are in 6th grade, like yeah, that's a really long time ago.
Yeah. So you remember that though?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I don't remember being actually told that he had died by my mom. Like, I don't remember that conversation at all. I don't remember the stream she said I had either.
I was just going to ask, do you know, like, have you ever found out the actual date?
That he died?
I know my dad died on June 12th.
Yeah.
June 12th of 2023.
It's just, I think it's December 12th. It's early. It's like between his birthday and my birthday, but I don't remember the exact date.
Did you ever resent your mom for not telling you right away?
Resent her? No. There was a lot of confusion for me because there wasn't a funeral or anything like that because he lived on the street. A. B, his family hated my mother, hated her so fucking much, and didn't tell her when they found out that he died and they had him cremated. And they knew like where I went to school, my brother and sister, they knew where we went to school. Like they could have gotten a message to the school. They didn't have to speak to my mom or whatever. But the point is like, they just like really was like, no, like at all costs, stay away from them. So like we weren't told at first. They cremated him. We never got a service. We never really got any kind of closure in that sense. So that was confusing for me. There was really I didn't really get to have any kind of like service, like recognition that he was here and he was gone and he was my dad. Like I never got any of that. So, and I'm just emotional talking about it right now. You know what I mean? And it's been that long, and yeah,
that kind of closure.
Yeah, I never really got that. It would have been nice to have that.
Yeah,
it's just like a little girl, just like not understanding. Like, but I don't understand, Mom. Like they hate you that much that they would want to keep that from me, or you know what I mean? And she had a hard time explaining it to me, but she was like, I did a lot of really messed up things when I was a kid and I hurt them, and trauma. They wanted to stay away from her. So yeah.
I know what it's like to be in your mom's shoes, where like my fiance, when she committed suicide, her family didn't want me at the funeral. You know what I mean? They kind of blamed me because I was enabling and she enabled me.
Yeah.
So I didn't go to her funeral, which caused a lot of people to be like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
Why weren't you there? And, it's almost better that way, because the last time we spent time together, she told me, I want this to be your last memory of me. Like she even put her ring back in my dresser and I didn't find it until after she did that. So I have a good memory of the last time we were together, where it's a positive. It was a good night. We didn't fight, nothing. It was one of those, she didn't have any like schizophrenic episodes, because she was poor schizophrenic. So she didn't have any kind of episodes or anything, and that's my last memory. I don't have a memory of seeing her saying goodbye.
Yeah.
I don't regret not going, but I have gotten closure now that I'm sober.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've kind of not moved on, but like I've closed that part of my life up,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. You find a way to process it in a way that you can at the time so that you can move forward. And if you ever need to open it back up, you can always adjust. And, you know, like recovery and grief and none of that stuff is linear. You can always make adjustments.
Yep. And there's always going to be adjustments that you need to make because you never know when it's going to hit you.
For
You
sure.
never know in grief, and it's going to rear its ugly head and be like, pay attention to me now.
Yep. It ebbs and flows.
Now, what were you telling me before we got on about ACE?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So the ACEs, I'm just, excuse me, because I Googled it real quick because my phone went black. The ACEs are adverse childhood experiences, and they are potentially traumatic events that can occur in a child's life from birth to the age of 17. And ACEs can include, the questions kind of cover things that cover abuse, neglect, violence, witnessing violence in the home or in the community, a family member attempting or dying by suicide, growing up in a household with mental health or substance use problems, parental separation or incarceration. All of these things, the more times that you answer yes to these questions, and there's 10 of them, the more likely you are to have long-term impacted. The more you are to have your life be impacted by long-term. I'm saying this completely wrong. Let me read this. ACEs can have long-term impacts on a child's health, well-being, and opportunities. There you go. So the toxic stress from the ACEs can change brain development, and it affects how the body responds to stress. So it can cause chronic health problems, mental illness, and substance use in adulthood. And ACEs also can negatively impact education and job opportunities. So it's really indicative of like kind of how you're set up for failure in a lot of these situations. And yeah, I'm a 10 out of 10 on the ACEs scale. So I, you know, I'm like, man, every day I'm like, good job. It's amazing you're even like still here and kicking and doing good and helping other people and like not using drugs every day. Like, go you, because I wasn't set up for a whole lot of success.
What else happened besides your dad passing away at an early age?
So my mom ended up struggling with substances later on. That was a whole journey. She is now 8 years sober from heroin herself, and you know, a bunch of other things. But heroin was like her hard thing. We had a podcast where we talked about all that kind of stuff. Like she told me a story about how she couldn't understand, like, why are my kids failing in school while I'm smoking crack in the car before going into their parent teacher conferences? Like, come on, like, how's this not connecting, Donna? Like, make the connection here. So there was that. There was, like I said, my father beat my mom a lot. I witnessed a lot of that. I did a lot of protecting my brother and sister and pulling them away from situations that they didn't need to see. There was attempted sexual assault from my stepfather's best friend. One day he was babysitting us. Why? I still don't understand to this day. I was 12 years old. Why he would be babysitting us when I was like essentially raising my brother and my sister all these years when my mom was like fucked up. It made no sense to me, but he was there, alas. And they were like at traffic court for the day. And my brother and sister were home and they were like roller skating outside. And for some reason, he asked me to go into my parents' bedroom. And I did. And I don't know why, but I'm not going to blame or shame myself here, but I did. And I went in. And his back was to the door. So the door was behind him and he was standing blocking it. And then I was facing him. And he had asked me if I had ever thought about him in a sexual way, if I had ever thought about kissing him. And my response was like, no, like what? Like, and he was so embarrassed, like, and like completely like frazzled and caught off guard that like, okay, like, don't tell anybody, like, you know, like, just got out of the room. And then that was that. And then I went and I got my brother and my sister, and I was like, get in the house. And I brought them home in the bedroom with me, and they stayed in the bedroom with me. Then the phone rang and my mom was on the phone, and I like said, you guys need to come home. And then when they came home, I told them what happened. And I really legitimately thought like that heads were going to fucking roll. I thought like this dude's life was over. This motherfucker was still allowed to sleep over our house after that. And I remember his girlfriend calling our house, and I was put on the phone with her, with a grown woman telling me that there's no way, you have to have misunderstood. There's no way that he would have ever tried to kiss you. There's no way, like just gaslighting me, calling me a liar. And I just like had to listen to this. And the thing about like trauma is it's not just like the act itself, it's all like the lasting shit around it. And so, yeah, like I wasn't necessarily sexually assaulted or touched in that situation, but he had been trying to groom me for a while. And then when he got me in that situation, my reaction, had I not reacted in such a way, I feel like he would have just like kept chipping away at it, you know? And then the fact that he was allowed to continue to stay at our house, like that was like, okay, do they believe me? Do they not believe me? This is so confusing because like I feel like they believe me because my mom wasn't calling me a liar. My stepdad wasn't calling me a liar, but they weren't doing anything about it. But then his girlfriend was calling me a liar. But then when he was over our house, like I remember him saying like, she'll forgive me when she sees what I get her for Christmas. So him acknowledging that he did it, like it was so confusing. And I really couldn't understand, why is he allowed to stay here? And I would be scared when he would stay over at night because I had a little sister and myself too, you know, but I was also like always just protecting my brother and my sister. And I had no idea like what other things were going through his mind. And I remember saying this to my mom and her dismissing me and her saying to me, like, do you really think that he's going to walk past my bedroom where your stepfather sleeps to get to you? And I was like, yeah, dude, he's a fucking pedophile. I do. And it was just like not heard. And we talked about this on the podcast together. And I asked her, I was like, I don't understand this, Mom. I really don't. Like, can you explain it to me? And with as much compassion as I tried to hold for her, I let her explain it to me. And she said, like, I was strung out and he was supposed to be getting a settlement, like a lawsuit settlement. And I was getting drugs from him and he's supposed to get a really big fucking payday. And I talked your stepfather out of like not killing him, basically.
I was just going to ask that if they were using together.
My stepfather was not a drug addict. Nope, never. He was a dealer. He sold drugs, but he never touched drugs. But the friend Patrick, and that's his real fucking name. So I'm not like hiding his identity. I don't know his last name. I would blast him if I did. But yeah, like he definitely apparently was smoking crack with my mom. So yeah.
I was just going to say, because you said it like he stayed over many times, not just one night.
And I don't know, maybe my mom was like, oh, he's never going to come to your room because he's up all night smoking crack with me. Like maybe that was like, but she couldn't say that to me, you know? So.
And you haven't seen him in a long time?
No, I couldn't tell you. I don't know the last time that I saw that guy. And I don't know why he stopped coming around. Probably because he never got the settlement. And they just like were done with him and on to somebody else.
Yeah, that must not. So you had quite a traumatic year when you were 12.
Sure did, yeah.
Because that's
tough.
Now, was he grooming you as in he had been around for a little while?
Yeah, he had been around, and I was like, I was in that like, oh, I look back and I like, I remember I said this to Jack one time. Jack is he's still my husband, but we're separated. I was like, I know, I was like really feeling myself, and I was like 12, and I was like wearing hoop earrings, and he was like, stop. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. Like, it doesn't matter if you were walking around naked, he was the adult. Like, Jack was a youth detention counselor, and he had situations where he worked a youth detention block with young women under 18. And a lot of them have really traumatic stories where men only are interested in them for sexual reasons. And he said there were many times where those young women would completely take their clothes off and just try to use their sexuality or whatever they had to win him over, to not write them up, or whatever the case may be. And he was like, it was my job to know that that was wrong, and it's every adult's job to know that that would be wrong, to know in this situation, and to say like, no, you don't need to do that anymore. But so, right, like, anyway, I felt like, oh, maybe I was
Putting out the
very
vibes.
short shorts and like looking too enticing, but like I was 12. I don't even know if I had my period yet. Like, so yeah, it doesn't matter like how I was dressing or whatever, but he was grooming me in the sense that like slowly was getting more comfortable with making comments over time and just being around more and more, like when he probably shouldn't have been, like an inappropriate family conversations, and just like way too close to certain situations and things, and me and my sister and my brother.
Yeah, because your sister's only 7 at the time, right? Or 6 at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
I can see how you're being protective though, because you grew up really fast, it sounds like.
I did. Yeah. Yeah. Like, I mean, at the age of 2 years old, I have memories seeing my father like punch my mom's teeth out. Like, and having to like pick up my infant brother and take him like behind a big giant TV. Cause like, when we were like kids, TVs weren't skinny and slim. They were big fucking pieces of furniture. So I remember going behind a piece of furniture, a giant TV, to hide with my brother. Cause I knew like, this is not safe. I feel unsafe. I have to protect him.
Did you guys ever get hit, or just your mom?
My dad never ever was violent with me that I remember. My mom has told me stories that like one time my dad got really angry, and the way that he like threw one of us down in the playpen, my grandmother saw it and was like, that's it. No way. He can't ever be around the babies again. Like, she just saw this aggression she was not comfortable with. And she was completely right. Had he had to be around crying children all the time, he probably would have ended up hitting one of us, but he never did. My mom, she definitely beat us with the belt and stuff. We got hit a lot. That was
This
not
was the 80s.
good. Yeah. Yeah. You want to talk? Okay. So trauma, you said the trauma dump. So I'm just going to go ahead and go into it. So here's something I can remember. This is also something that is indicative of, I guess, adverse childhood experiences and trauma in children, is children wetting the bed. I peed the bed until I was 12. And my brother, he struggled very young too. I don't know until what age he struggled, but he also struggled as well. And it was such an issue in our house that I remember my sister, even once, she didn't pee the bed, but I remember one time she did pee the bed on purpose so she could be like us. And then I got hit for that. So, but like, I remember like telling my mom, like, I peed the bed again, and getting hit for it, and it was something it was out of my control. And I remember being like, oh, like, I didn't mean to do this. I don't want to do this. This is horrible. I don't like doing it. But it was something that was such a problem for me. And you talked about it being the 80s, like the interventions that they had. Instead of like therapy or anything like that, they sewed in these like buzzer alarm things into my underwear that would be alerted when there was urine, and it would go off and alert like an alarm clock. And I remember the first time it went off and everybody woke up in the house and it was like, what is this? Like this panic. And then we never used that shit again. But like that was one of the interventions that they tried with me. But then it just became like plastic sheets underneath of it. But like, yeah, getting beat for like peeing the bed, not cool.
You know, this is a show in its early infancy, but you're already the second person to tell me that. And for him, it was 5 to 14. And it was all the years that he was molested that stemmed from it. As early as 5 years old was when that, inappropriate behavior was going on. So I've heard it before, and I'm not surprised by it, that it's definitely a trauma response, whether it was trauma from not having your dad around anymore, because you would have been 6, like you said, when he left the house.
Yeah. Or when we left, yeah.
Yeah. Or yeah, you guys left him.
Yeah, but you know what? Like he's still like, and like I told you, that was like part of the agreement, right? My grandmother's like SSI paid for my mom's rent in this shitty little apartment building. But the agreement was you don't see Rick. But Rick would still come over all the time. And Rick was still using and drinking. And so there was still chaos happening all the time. I remember one particular night, they were fighting in the living room. And my mom was sitting in a chair. And he was standing over her. And he just straight fucking punched her in the mouth. And he knocked her teeth out. And I remember being in the bedroom. And I must have been dissociated at the time, but like literally doing this, like take 1, take 2. Like I was directing like a movie, like not even like really in what was happening, because that's scary. And I don't know where my brother and sister were. They're probably sleeping or in their bedrooms, but that's what I was doing at the time, pretending I was a movie director while my dad was knocking my mom's teeth out. And then for the rest of my life, she's had issues with those. She's had to get like false teeth and like crowns and things like that. And throughout my life, like some have fallen out, or she would go days without like those teeth in her mouth, and she would feel shamed by it. And like, I can't imagine how she must feel. Like she was in love with a man who did that to her. Like I've been in love with a man who was a fucking piece of shit and treated me horrendously and was abusive in every single possible way except for beating me. I don't know how she withstood that.
Yeah. And you'll never hopefully have to understand, because one of those things that where you're better off not sometimes understanding.
Truth, and when you say that, I'm reminded of a time that my mom said to me before I understood addiction, when I thought it was just a choice. And I know this show's not about addiction, but I remember her saying to me, Julianne, you'll never understand. And I pray to God that you never understand. And then when I understood, I was like, oh, okay, then I get it. But yeah, it's one of those things, you don't get it till you get it.
Do you think any of your addictions stem from your childhood? Like,
yeah.
Like, were you numbing?
At a point, yeah. It didn't start like I wasn't looking for something to numb out on. It started with an injury. But I will say that all of the addict behavior was present way before the drugs were there. So if we take the drugs out of my life, before the drugs even got there, growing up, when I first started making money, I love to shop. If I find a top that I like in one color, I'll buy it in every color. My mom has said my whole life that I'm a shopaholic. She said that I'm a workaholic. She has said that I am a hypochondriac. I couldn't think of the word, that too. But yeah, I like to shop. I love buying things, and that has been just like a theme in my life, just like excess, just doing things to excess all the time. And then like when I started to like boys, and I was like boy crazy. And then when I had a boyfriend. It was like, I realized this much later on in life, but the relationship and or the man became my higher power. That became like the whole thing that I was like living in service for, that relationship. Everything else, nothing else really mattered. So there was definitely like, I would say like love addiction and codependency and like just really shitty, poor behavior. That all was like very present leading up to, yeah. And then once the drugs were introduced, I think there was a lot that probably came to the surface with the fact that I had to admit to myself that I was acknowledging that there was an issue like almost immediately, because I was like, oh, I really like these. And perhaps it's not as easy as I thought to just not take these. But you know what? I'm not fucking weak. If I have to, I'll just detox and it'll be fine. Like that was the thought process. But that's not how it worked out. Did that answer the question?
Yeah. Yeah, that made sense. It so growing up now as a teenager, what was it like, with your mom not really being there and you being protective of your brother and sister? Were you able to still go out and kind of like be rambunctious, or were you more like staying in and taking care and watching and babysitting?
So I was a really good kid. I did not get into trouble. I got really good grades. I was I was in Catholic school. And so at Catholic school, when they grade you on behavior, they give you O's for outstanding or VGs for very good. And I always got O's, outstanding. Like nobody ever got outstandings in the class. Like I was so well behaved. I never got in trouble. Also maybe a trauma response. Like how much of my life I wonder is like a trauma response, and who would I had been without this kind of stuff? And it's kind of one of those, a girlfriend's one, like you're giving off like, would you still love me if I was a worm kind of like energy. But I wonder who I would have been had all these things not been present in my life. So it's kind of it's a weird chicken or the egg situation. But no, I didn't get into a lot of trouble. I didn't experiment with drugs or alcohol. I didn't necessarily stay home and take care of my brother and sister, because they also found safety in friends' houses and things. So they had places to go. But yeah, no, I wasn't running around and getting in trouble.
What was it like, trying to keep up the appearance of, having a good school life, and also, seeing your mom be an addict too?
It was rough because this might be why that guy Patrick actually stopped coming around. I don't think it was necessarily he stopped coming around. I think it was my stepfather perhaps got arrested for selling drugs. And then my grandfather came in and saw how fucked up my mom was and threw her in rehab and took me, my brother, and my sister, and we went and lived with my Aunt Ann. And then we lived with my Aunt Ann from like eighth grade or seventh grade and eighth grade for me. And then when my mom got out of treatment and my stepdad got out of jail, they took us back. And then we got this new house, and that was like my freshman year of high school, right? And so I think I was trying to like not let everybody know that all that was going on. I really didn't want anybody to know any of that. And it wasn't easy to keep up those appearances, because at first my mom came home and she had to take parenting classes, and she had to remain clean. I hate that term, but clean and sober in recovery, and pee clean and to keep custody and all that kind of stuff. And my stepdad had to see his parole officer or probation officer, whichever one it was.
Parole.
So they couldn't get
out of prison, and probation is when you skip prison and just get in trouble, reprimanded once a month.
Okay. Yeah. I've never had that. That part's not a part of my personal. Yeah. I've only spent one night in jail, thank God, and I beat those charges. But yeah, so they couldn't really necessarily get into trouble like right away. But after some time, my mom, there would be like a relapse here or there, or they would get into really bad arguments. And he was abusive too. Apparently in a different way. Like their arguments would be explosive and would only last for like an hour. But my mom said that when her and my dad would fight, like their fights would last for fucking days and weeks. Like they just like didn't end. So he would beat her, and he was big. He was 6'2", and she is a little tiny lady. She is 4'9", and he, I don't know how her face has not shattered a million times over. I mean, I understand why her teeth have fallen out and why they've been knocked out by these two fucking idiots. Because they put their fists through her face, but I just don't know how she's withstood these beatings, to be quite honest with you. I've watched him hold her head over the sink with a butcher's knife so that when he slit her throat, at least it would be like in the sink and he wouldn't make too much of a mess. Like I've seen some really wild, crazy fucking things. She's experienced a lot of wild, crazy fucking things, traumatic things. Yeah.
How long was your stepdad around for?
So he was in my life from, let's see, like 7th grade until a couple years after I graduated high school. So at least a decade or more. But he finally did go to jail for putting his hands on my mom. She finally found the strength to follow through with charges. He beat the shit out of her on the front lawn, and there were witnesses, and she finally showed up to court every single time, and he went to jail for that.
Good.
Yeah.
And you're witnessing all this?
I didn't see that exact fight. The thing with my stepdad was he would act insane with my brother and sister, especially when I wasn't around. He fucked with them on a different level when I wasn't there. Because I would put myself in front of my brother and my sister, and I would egg him on, and I would try to get him to put his fucking hands on me, because it would be a different story if he put his hands on me. My mom could say, like, no, I don't want to press charges, but he couldn't beat a child and get away with it, I thought. So I tried so hard, and he never, ever, ever bit. But yeah, I didn't see a lot of the stuff that he did with my brother and my sister, but I do have one memory of being in my bedroom and my sister running up the steps really fast, and she never barged in my room because we had strict rules about that, about like asking permission to come in each other's rooms. And she barged in with the dog, and I just knew instinctively like to shut the door, and I was like, get in my closet. I had like a walk-in closet, and I could just hear him barreling up the fucking steps, and I just had my back against the door while they were getting in the closet. And then I got to the other closet, and he comes in, and he is like pulling the door and trying to get his hand in there. And I'm just like trying to keep it shut. And then I let him get his hand in there at like a good amount. And I just fucking slammed it as hard as I could to get rid of him. And I did. And he was upset and he was whatever, but he got the fuck out of my room. And I don't know what he was chasing my sister for. Maybe he was chasing the dog and he was trying to put his hands on the dog. My sister was trying to protect the dog. Because that's also how he would fuck with them. If he couldn't put his hands on them, he would hurt the dog because he knew that would like kill us. So yeah, maybe I didn't see him put his hands on my brother or my sister or my mom as much as he did, but I knew it was happening, and it was like a game for him to fuck with me in that way. So it would be hard. Like I wouldn't want to be away, but he fucked with me at such a level. I had to move out at a certain point. I moved out when I was 17 years old, and I moved in with his sister, believe it or not, his sister and mother, because they knew what a fucking nightmare he was. They offered me a room in their house while I graduated high school. And then when my mom put him in jail is when I moved back home with my mom, and I helped her. We help her rent a house and, get things back together. Because before that, it was all in my stepdad's name by design to keep her locked down. So, yeah.
Do you think that rule of not barging in rooms had to do with your mom doing drugs?
Probably. Yeah.
Because I know if I was getting high, I would make a rule like it's really adamant about not walking in on me. You know,
That's I really never even thought that until right this moment. But I do remember there was a hole in one of the doors. Like this is years and years before, like the Patrick years, like when I was like 12. I remember sorry, my phone is ringing. Oh, I'm so sorry. I lost my train of
the
thought.
Patrick years. You remember the
I was
Patrick
looking
years?
through a door. There was a hole in the door, and I saw him counting pills. So yes, that makes so much sense to me that we're not allowed to barge in rooms, because if he's going to be counting pills, or my mom's going to be smoking crack or shooting up or something like that, yeah. And there were times that I remember when my stepdad was in jail before my grandfather came in and took us out. It was like when it was getting really bad. I remember her being in the bathroom and me smelling like burning smoke and like smells that weren't familiar. And now I know that was crack. But at the time, I would ask her, and she would dismiss me, and she would say, "Oh, I'm just lighting a cigarette in the bathroom because I feel close to your grandmother when I light a cigarette." Because we used to light cigarettes for my grandmother at the cemetery. We would light, here you go, Mom, smoke a cigarette and put it on top of the stone. It was like a thing we always did. And so that made sense to me as a child. I'm like, you use my fucking grandmother against me, man. But I get it as an adult and as an addict,
That's such a funny way to like. Was your grandma known to be a chain smoker?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Okay.
Yeah, it made 100% sense. Yes. And my mom did not smoke. And so that's why I was like, why am I smelling smoke? Mom, you don't smoke. She's like, I feel close to your grandmother when I do it. I'm like, okay.
No, that does make sense.
Yeah.
That
I
she
really believed my mom on like a lot of things, just like implicitly. But then there were some things that like I just knew intuitively in my body. I would watch her in like interactions and conversation. I would just be like, that's not right. Something's wrong there. It's kind of funny.
like what?
Just the way, okay, so here's one specific instance. I remember so in second grade, I had a classmate whose father died by suicide. It was very tragic. But in Catholic school, we all went to the funeral as a class. And I guess my mom must have come or something. But anyway, I guess they let the parents know. However, whatever way, my mom knew. And we went to the zoo, and I was in this girl's group for the zoo, and her mom chaperoned, and my mom also came. And I remember sitting on the picnic tables and my mom asking questions. And I just knew these questions are so fucking inappropriate. And I was in second grade. My mom was asking questions about how he died by suicide, how this woman found him, how she felt, how she coping. Like this literally happened that year. We went to my classmate's dad's funeral. And then at some point before the end of the year, we went to the zoo, and here's my fucking 25-year-old mother, or however old she was at the time, asking all these insane ass questions because she was probably so curious, because my dad probably had attempts, and my dad was like so chaotic and like just insane. And she was probably just like reaching and trying to connect. And I don't know, but she was asking some real wild questions that I knew at the time. And I know now that you would just not ask someone, that it would just be so completely inappropriate to put someone in that position to have to answer those questions. And especially on a school trip with kids around.
Yeah, it's almost like projection.
Yes.
Like when I first got sober, I was in rehab, and you've been in rehab. You know how you do IOP, but like inside the rehab, you're not going. It's not outpatient. It's more intensive inpatient.
Yeah.
And you have groups you have like a 2-hour group with your rehab, and like a certain counselor or therapist runs it.
Yeah.
And I remember one day we were sitting in a group, and the counselor was my therapist, and she was going around the room. I forget what the topic even was. And this one dude was like, well, I think if you kill yourself, you're a coward, which struck me because I was really 3 years grieving my fiance's death. And I went off on him. I said, you're just saying that because you had the thought to do it, but you didn't have the balls to go through with it, you pussy. and he started bawling his eyes out. And he left the room. And my therapist is like, "We're gonna talk about this Friday," to me. But it turned out, yeah, he did. He had thoughts about it, and he couldn't follow through with it, and he was calling himself a coward. And I apologized to him. After talking to my therapist, she advised that I should probably apologize to him. And the really weird thing is he was from Jersey too. We were the only ones from Jersey there, except for I grew up in South Jersey, 5 minutes from Philadelphia. He grew up a half an hour from Philadelphia and talked like you grew up inside the city. And it really annoyed me as somebody who grew up right outside the city.
I knew you were going to say, I thought you were going to say that he claimed Philly and that just fucking annoyed you. And I was going to be like, I get it.
Yeah, no, he did. He did. He claimed himself being from Philly. It's like, no, dude, I was from Jersey, but I lived way closer to Philly than you did. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. You're from Swedesboro, bro. You're a half an hour away from Philly. I grew up right at the end of the Walt Whitman Bridge. I was right like the Black Horse Pike.
You get so triggered by that.
Oh my God. The little thing. I was in California, so I was on the other side of the country. They don't know the difference between Swedesboro and Audubon.
Right. Yeah.
I'm like, you gotta know this dude is not from Philly. He's a
liar.
He's a liar. And he just triggered me the entire time in rehab. Everything he did triggered me because we're so sensitive.
It's very much giving that like being homophobic because you're gay.
Yeah. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is, which is a very real thing. It happens all the time. And to this day, I still don't, I was told one time, but I seem to have blocked it. I don't know, going back to the suicide, I don't know the method she did it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because I didn't want to ask too many questions.
See, because you wouldn't want to be inappropriate like my mom. But you had a fucking a relationship with this person. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh man, you were in a tough spot.
Yeah. It's one of those things that I've just learned to have to live with.
Yeah.
It's been 9 years now, and I'm in a much different place than I was 9 years ago. I'm in a relationship now that I've been in for longer than that relationship was, because at the time that was the longest relationship I'd been in. I was always single until her, and I was always single after her. So like, because I didn't want to bring anybody else into my world because I was a drug addict. And look what happened when I finally did let somebody in. So I was afraid to let anybody else in, and I just dove headfirst into my drugs and into my drinking, to where I'm not going to bring anybody down with me again.
Yeah.
So when I got sober is when I started dating again. And luckily, I met my wife at 11 months sober. And I told her, I said, we can't be in a relationship until after I celebrate my 1 year anniversary being clean. That was April 5th of 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And then April 25th, I flew to California and celebrated my 1 year anniversary in California, because I wanted to be in the same place I got sober.
Oh, how cool.
Go to my old meetings and collect 1 year chips at all my old meetings. And then I came home and I asked her to marry me. So we skipped dating.
I love that.
We were together for 3 weeks, and then we were engaged.
Oh, okay. So this is not as fun to relate to because my husband and I are separated now. But I met him and I moved in with him after 2 months. We were engaged after 7 months, and we were married like a couple days before the 2-year mark. It was like very, very fast for us too. Like I just knew right away with him, and we had a very long and happy marriage. We saved lots of dogs, and like we did lots of great stuff. And I've just like come to this realization myself that like, just because our marriage ended doesn't mean that it wasn't successful. Like we had a successful marriage and relationship and family for like almost 15 years. And we're still taking care of each other, and like I still help with his mom and stuff like that. It's just that we're in a different kind of relationship now. Doesn't mean it's not heartbreaking, but yeah.
Yeah.
But I very much relate to the like knowing instantly that somebody is very, very special and you're going to have them in your life forever.
Yeah, we would have been married sooner, but her husband was dragging his feet with the divorce. So, but the day he signed the divorce papers, we walked across the street and we signed a marriage license. And like literally the town hall is right here, and then across the street was the lawyer's office. So we
I
literally
love
picked
that.
up the divorce papers, walked right across the street, and signed a marriage license.
You're like,
We got married like a week later. We were COVID married, so we got
oh,
married in our living room, and our best friend did the service, and yeah, it was really
that's
low key.
fun. That's really intimate and special.
Yeah, I'd rather that than a whole entire. She had been married before, so she didn't care as much. Not that she didn't care, but she didn't need the show.
Yeah, it's a
She
lot
didn't
of
need the
money.
bride. She didn't need the bridal shower. She didn't need the engagement party. She didn't need. Well, she already did there. Been there, done that.
I'll tell you, as a woman who's already done it, it's very easy to say you don't need it all. But I'm somebody who had it because I very much needed it and wanted it. But like, so I get it. But yeah, just it's expensive. If you don't have to spend as much money, don't spend as much money. But
I think we spent $60 between the dominoes and the marriage license.
oh, that's amazing.
My dad gave me a $500 check as a thank you for not having a wedding.
That's so awesome.
He was like, "Thank you for not having a big wedding," because my sister had like a big extravagant wedding, and he had luckily had some. He was good in the stock market, so this was like 2020, 2021 when the stock market was going up and down like crazy. And he made a bunch of money and paid for my sister's wedding that way, and she got to have this big elaborate wedding. But I'm sitting at my sister's wedding, and I'm sober during the wedding, and I'm sitting there going, like, man, I'm so glad I didn't do any of this shit.
Yeah,
Like,
good.
which is because like somebody like me, I used to do stand-up comedy, so I like being the center of attention when it comes to holding
Yes.
the microphone. You're listening to me when I'm talking. Like I started out doing stand-up in Philly at Helium.
It's very addict behavior to want to be a comedian and to want validation like
It
that.
was an addiction too when I was in a comedian. Like, how are you in the city of Philadelphia?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I used to go to Good Comedy Theater in Chinatown.
Okay.
It's right in Chinatown. It's called the Good Comedy Theater, and I would go there every Sunday. And I would do Helium on Tuesday nights was their open mic. And I was living in Harrisburg area at the time,
Oh my God.
but I was driving to
All the way
Jersey.
in?
Well, I was going to get pills anyway.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So my excuse to my family is I'm going to be in town because I'm doing stand up, but really I'm going to be in town because I'm picking up pills
Yeah.
and then I'm doing stand up.
Just the stand up is a bonus.
There was one night I'll never forget. I know this isn't about me, but I felt so bad for this kid. I was doing comedy on Thursday nights in Harrisburg, and I met this kid. He was like 20 years old, and he was like, I've always wanted to do stand up in Philly. I'm like, well, I'll take you sometime. And so I take him, but I needed to get high before I went up on stage. Like, there's no way I'm performing not high.
Naturally.
So we pass Philadelphia, and now we're over the bridge and we're in Jersey. And he's like, what are we doing at this McDonald's?
Like,
And I was like, I got to meet somebody real quick. And he was like, oh, okay. Well, I just hope you're not getting pills or something, because like when I was a teenager, we stole a bunch of my friends' pills, and then we got into a car accident and someone died.
ooh.
And I was like, yeah, they're pills.
You told the truth?
I told the truth. I had to do them. So, and I was
Are you
withdrawing.
snorting them?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. You needed somewhere to chop them up. Okay.
Yeah. I
Okay. I'm like, what do you mean?
And so, and then the worst part was, it was one of those shows that you pull your name out of a hat and they pull names out of a hat, and that person goes up on stage. So I got selected and he didn't. So he did that whole trip and he never got to even perform.
And he didn't even do any pills.
And then no, he had to watch me do them. And he fell asleep after the show. Like he fell asleep right away in the car. So I went back over the bridge again and bought more pills. I made amends to him so quickly. Like I was 9 months sober when I went back to that comedy store, the comedy club in Harrisburg. And I saw him there and I was like, oh my God, thank God I'm running into you because I had some serious amends to make. Do you mind coming outside for a cigarette? And he didn't smoke, but he came outside with me in the middle of January and let me apologize to him.
He was a good soul. He was a good egg.
Yeah. I was like, I'm giving you this story to tell on stage. I don't want to tell this story on stage. This is your story to tell. You can talk about that story.
Cool.
Thanks. That was like my way of.
Did he ever use it?
I don't know.
I love that you offered that.
I was so triggered being in a bar that I stopped doing stand-up comedy.
Good for you. Hard choice, but good choice.
Yeah, it was a tough choice because I love doing it so much. Yeah. But now I can like make people laugh and do my podcasts, and that's good enough for me. I always wanted to open up a club and allow pot smoke.
Oh, I love that.
But not alcohol.
I love that idea.
Because I didn't want to have to deal with a bunch of drunks if I opened a comedy club. But I can deal with a bunch of potheads.
Sure.
Even though I don't smoke anymore.
Yeah.
I would still do that, but it's not legal in Pennsylvania yet. If it ever becomes legal in Pennsylvania, it's something I'm definitely going to have a hard interest in opening still.
Yeah. Hit me up because I would be interested too.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
So it's something that I've always thought about. But anyway, we're on you. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about that like rings true that trauma-wise that you feel like you need to talk about?
Trauma-wise, let me think.
Because we only really talked about through high school.
Yeah. I'll say that, okay, so when I was 18, I had this experience that was absolutely sexual assault, and I didn't recognize it as such until, again, Jack, my husband, pointed it out to me. I also didn't recognize that I had body dysmorphia or like really disorder. I know I had disordered eating, but I didn't know how bad I didn't know that I had body dysmorphia or recognize that it was a common theme between my brother, my sister, and I either until he pointed it out to me. Like he was able to recognize and help me connect all of these dots of my life that I really had not recognized before. And I think maybe that's why a lot of the stuff came to the surface in my addiction. Because like I said, our relationship was very fast paced, right? And so as I was getting to know him, as he was getting to know me, I was trauma dumping all the time. He was trauma dumping. And it was like 3 months into our marriage, I was prescribed pills. And like I told you, I crossed the line from just casual user or like recreational use into being dependent chemically and physically addicted so very quickly that while I was having these realizations, I was also probably numbing some of the realizations, but also coming to the terms with like, oh, wow, I'm just like my mom. I'm an addict. And I think I was trying to say that part earlier, and I don't think I really came back. I don't think I closed the circle, but that was so hard for me in realizing that I was an addict like my mom. And that's what kept me in addiction longer, because I couldn't admit that I was like her. My biggest goal in life was to not be like her, to not be a drug addict like her, not to be in abusive relationships like her, not to let a man walk all over me just like her. And I did all of those things. But the drug addiction one was like the pinnacle, the absolute hardest one for me to swallow and accept and say, okay, drug addiction is not a choice. And I'm also a drug addict, just like her, just like my father, just like all those junkies and scumbags that I always talked bad about and vilified. But so anyway, yes, I think I was numbing at that point, but there was this situation that I never recognized as sexual assault. And It was because I think it was a boyfriend that did it to me, and because I didn't say no. What happened was we were hanging out and everybody was drinking. Everybody had gone to bed, but we were upstairs in the attic. And I was like sitting on the edge of the couch, just kind of like sitting there with my eyes closed. He was over here sleeping. And I just thought everybody was going to go to bed. And then the next thing I know, his hand is on my breast. But to him, I'm fully sleeping, right? So I don't move because I'm like, what do I do? He's drunk and he's like a new boyfriend. Um, and he pulled one of my breasts out and pulled his dick out and started to jerk off. And I just sat there frozen and did nothing. Literally nothing. Let him finish. He went to bed. And then I went to bed. And I never processed that as like sexual assault. Like in his eyes, I was sleeping and he fully thought it was appropriate to take my clothes off and like fondle me to get himself off. Completely inappropriate. It's just like, that's just something I want to acknowledge. It's just like, just because you don't say no, it doesn't mean it's not sexual assault. And that's not something I really ever realized in that it was to me until many years later. And it happened to be a man who helped point it out to me. And I shit on men so often that I want to say thank you to the allies, and recognize stuff like that. Again, it was my husband who said it doesn't matter if you were naked. He was the one who pointed all these things out to me. So yeah, I guess I'm just like connecting all these dots right now in this moment that like he played a huge role in helping me move forward as an adult, but also at the same time, when the drugs entered the picture, I was in this like extreme shame spiral. But thank God I came out on the other side, right? Because I was able to process the trauma and the addiction part of it. And now I'm 8 years sober. And I'm even processing like all this love addiction and codependency stuff that I never really dealt with too, with Swift Steps. And I know we're not talking about that, but that's a recovery community that I'm a part of and that I founded. And we do a lot of song breakdowns. And when we do the song breakdowns, I really look through the lens of my codependency and relationships and love addiction when I'm not relating it to actual like the chemical addiction. And so in the last 8 months, I've probably done like more of a deep dive into my trauma than I ever have in the last 8 years. So yeah, thank God that I was able to stay alive long enough to make it to this point to be able to pull at these threads. I'm just like super grateful to be able to do that here with you right now.
Now, you said 8 years is how long you've been sober.
Yeah.
But you've also said your mom has 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
Who got sober first?
She did. A month before me.
Did she go to a rehab?
She had a psychotic break. We also had tandem DUIs 1 month apart, so that's kind of fun. But she went into treatment, not treatment.
Just like your mom.
It's like my mama. I tried to not be like her, but I'm in like her in so many fucking ways, man. And now that I live with her, I see how much I'm like her. Oh, it's kind of fun. It's really hysterical.
You're like a sitcom.
It is a sitcom, dude. I say all the time, we should have like a camera in here because first of all, my mother and I are ridiculous. And my sister's always filming us on like Snapchat and stuff like that. And she says, this is for the file. She saves it. And she says, it's for when you guys die. I have videos of you. But she says that she just like when she gets sad or when she's depressed, she goes back and she watches those videos because they make her so happy that we all live together again and we all love each other again. And like, we actually can make it through the day without fighting or hating one another and allowing all the shit that we allowed to get in the way before of just realizing that we're family and we're more alike than we are different. So that's kind of cool.
So she had a break and then you went to rehab a month later?
Yeah. So she had a psychotic break. Sorry, I got off track there. She had the psychotic break and she was in restraints in the hospital. And like, she was on the phone with a cousin of mine and she called this cousin my stepdad's name, who she hadn't been with in over a decade. And he called me and he was like, I've never heard your mom like this. She sounds awful. And they had gone on so many runs together. Like if she sounded bad to him, it was bad. So I left work and I went to the hospital and she was in restraints. And I really thought like, this is like the end of her here. Like she didn't want to be on earth anymore. It was too hard for her. She told me she didn't want to be here anymore. You know, she was like, please just take care of your brother and your sister. And I remember thinking like, I know you're not supposed to tell someone it's okay, but she's like struggling so hard. Like, I don't want her to suffer. Like, this is horrendous. And after that, she started to go to IOP and she got into a recovery house. And she got off everything. Like, she couldn't be on Suboxone or anything in the recovery house, no Ativan, no nothing. And that was for the first time, I think, probably in my life and in all of her sobriety attempts, that she kind of went without anything. And then very shortly after, I fell asleep at my desk at work and they were like, hey, you want to save your job? And I was like, well, I need money to buy drugs. So yeah. And I went to treatment.
And now you're both sober 8 years. That's pretty crazy that you both have almost the same sober date.
I know. It's really fun. We get to celebrate together. And her boyfriend is only like 2 weeks prior to her. So like all of our sober dates are around the same time. And so this year I got to have him come and speak at my meeting for his anniversary. And then my mom spoke for her anniversary. And then my sister's in recovery from a lot of different things that but not from a drug addiction, but she came and she got to tell her story about what it was like to deal with my mom and myself. And she got to share that with our community. And then I got to share for my year. So yeah, it is really cool that we all get to celebrate around the same time together.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you guys have such a close relationship now, as opposed to how tumultuous it was growing up and how you never really knew what mom was going to show up that day.
I really didn't know what mom was going to show up.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to know you. I'm happy that you sit down and being so open and honest. I know it's not easy to kind of turn back the clock and relive all that shit that you've been through.
You know what? It's probably like really weird, but I really enjoy talking about this shit. I love getting into all this kind of stuff with people and connecting. So I appreciate the opportunity.
And
yeah, I'm happy to know you. And you're really killing it, man. Like you're really making a go at like putting out so many episodes a day. And now you have this second podcast. So like congratulations and thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. My pleasure.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you soon, Julianne.